Evening all, welcome to the Pyramid Podcast where three lads discuss all things English football pyramid. On today's episode we'll have reflections on the FA Cup, including a huge win for 6th tier side Maidstone, some huge management news that's shaking up the footballing world. We'll look ahead to a full fixture list of midweek Premier League, we'll review the key weekend action across the EFL, and we'll finish with Lauro, who'll talk us through Yeovil's weekend draw at St Albans, their fixture tomorrow night against Slough, and it's his turn at providing this week's trivia question. I'm your host, Alex Murphy, and once again, I'm joined by Tom Gallagher and Tom Lawrence. Boys, only one place to start with the FA Cup. Maidstone won 2-1 at Ipswich into the fifth round of the FA Cup. Lauro, I think if memory serves me right, I tipped them up at 25-1. So A, did you back them? And B, just reflections on that result for George Elokobi's men.
Yeah, I did back them. I think by the time that I'd got on to William Hill, other betting sites are available. A lot of other people would listen to the pod because they've been backed into 20s. But watching the game, the first thing that struck me about that was that obviously amazing result, amazing story for the FA Cup, which you probably needed this year because there's been lots of scepticism again about how well received it is and how celebrated it is in the country, and it seems to be dwindling every year. To have Maidstone reach the fifth round is fantastic. I've been lucky enough to watch a lot of National League South football this season, specifically Maidstone, Yeovil, and every other team in the league. There are some good players, good managers, and it's great to see. But the thing that struck me the most was just like how good their goals were. Like, it wasn't like they had a game plan. They obviously wanted to nick a goal, defend, and try and see it out, and they had to sort of get in front twice. But both of the goals were really well worked and really like clinical and ice cold. From the striker that scored the first one, I think it was a midfielder that went through for the second. Names escape me at the moment, but lobbing the keeper like that, particularly that first one in front of the Portman Road crowd, there must have been thousands and thousands of fans there, way more than Maidstone are used to playing in front of. And then what a moment for their fans, which looked pretty rowdy, didn't it, with some explicit scenes coming out of their celebrations. But great for George Elokobi. A little bit of a shame that they haven't got a huge tie in the next round, but at least they'll still get a trip to the Rico or Hillsborough. So fantastic for Maidstone, and another fantastic advert for the English football pyramid, where a team in the 6th tier could go to Portman Road and do something like that. So well done, all involved.
Yeah, indeed. And part of the reason why I guess we started Pyramid Podcast really was to reflect on sort of footy, not just in the Premier League. I did see their draw, not the most kind of appetising out of what was available, but I did kind of see some people saying, well, look, that's kind of maybe a sign of how far Maidstone have gone in the Cup, where the fact that getting a big championship side in Coventry or Sheffield Wednesday away is seen as a bit of a damp squib for them. But if they've beaten second place in there, maybe they're looking at that now. I know the prize money's really hotting up now for a club of that size. They might think, well, we can go and win again. And then suddenly, what are they into then? Will that be the quarterfinals, the last 16? Like, quarterfinals, unbelievable for them. So, yeah, well done to George Elokobi. Well done to Maidstone, flying the flag for National League South. Obviously, a league close to our hearts at the minute with the Glovers in there. But, yeah, big result for them. And I think right down to earth, because they've got a Kent Cup quarter-final this week against Punjab United. So from Portman Road to Punjab to then I think got Yeovil next weekend in the league. Some level of footy that they're bouncing about in there. Move on to another FA Cup game. So Man United went to Newport yesterday, Tomo. United went 2-0 up. Looked like it was going to be plain sailing, absolutely carving Newport apart. Looks like they played kind of wing backs and our wingers were getting in behind every time. Started getting a bit greedy, United, missed a couple chances, and then a couple of decent work goals for Newport. One kind of an absolute cracker, another one really well worked, and suddenly looked a bit jittery for United.
Yeah, and you've got to give Newport a lot of credit, really, because like you mentioned there, we battered them really for the first 20, 25 minutes. Probably should have been 3-4 up, missed a couple of really good chances. Garnacho being the main culprit, I guess, because if he squares it, makes it 3, it's game over. The reality of, I guess, of a Premier League club being 2-0 up at Newport in the FA Cup is that 2-0 should be game over. But when it's United, we've spoken time and time again this season that when something slightly negative happens, i.e. concede a worldie, which you can do even at that level. Bryn Morris, I believe, unleashed a great strike, got a deflection, okay, a little bit lucky, but they're back in the game. The crowd get up for it, and then it's how do you react to that as a United team who are in the Premier League should be able to deal with situations like that, and it wasn't the case really. And actually, their second goal I thought was fantastic football. Right from the goalkeeper's long ball, straight to their, I think it's their right winger, brought it down brilliantly, played in their striker who chested it down, knocked it down to centre mid, sprayed it out to the left wing, first time cross, and then it was a brilliant finish. So sometimes you just got to applaud the opposition, even though it was League Two opposition. It was a great goal. In the end, we get the win. Really frustrating, really, after starting so well. But at the end of the day, it's a cup competition. The only thing that matters is just winning and getting into the next round.
Yeah, I think actually United got a bit of a hard time for it yesterday. Newport obviously conceding 2 goals against a team that are towards the bottom of League Two. I get it. One's a worldie that's been deflected. Second one I thought was a well-worked goal. I thought Varane was at fault for it. Dalot maybe a bit out of position as well. But on the whole, I thought United carved them apart. Another team creates way more chances, scores way more goals with the chances that we created there. But it's just kind of a cycle of where United are in the press and things that don't help Tomo. Is what's happening with obviously Marcus Rashford at the minute. So it sounds like he's taken his time off to go and visit an ex-teammate who now plays over in Northern Ireland, gone out on the Wednesday night, then subsequently, which seems to be what's caused the big trouble, gone out on the Thursday night and then meant to be in training on the Friday and report back ready to get ready for Newport and has called in sick and obviously then made himself not available for training. But just more kind of fallout that Eric Ten Hag doesn't need, but United as a whole don't need either.
Yeah, and it's not, if this was Marcus Rashford's first mishap or misstep, you could forgive him a little bit, although this is quite a big misstep. But he's had a couple of incidents this season. He's not played well this season. Man United haven't played well this season. And if you're a professional, these are the type of sort of decisions that you make in your life that kind of set you apart from the rest. If say, for instance, Erling Haaland did this, say 7 months ago or something, and he was just on the back of scoring a couple hat-tricks, Man City have won 3 in a row, nothing would be said because they're winning, he's doing it on the pitch. But when Rashford's doing this, and as a fan, the one thing that's hard to take, I guess, is look, we played Spurs 10 days ago, or whatever it was now, and they had 7 days off, the players. And then they come back in training on Monday, having 7 days off, train Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Then they have Thursday off. So he's gone off to Ireland to get pissed up both nights and then miss training when he's had a week off a couple of days before. If he wanted to go and let his hair down and get pissed up, just go and do it then. There's no problem. It wouldn't even be a story now. So he's not helped himself. He's not played well this season. So it's one thing after another with him. And it's not for me really to slate these players for going out and letting their hair down, because we all know we all like to do it as well. But we're not professional athletes playing for Manchester United Football Club, and we're not on 325 grand a week. And just quickly before I finish up, a big point that us fans, I guess, aren't really happy with is he signed a 325 grand a week contract in the summer, and ever since then, it's gone downhill. And it's hard to separate those two issues, where he's almost let his foot off the gas performance-wise. He looks like he's taken his eye off the ball professionally, and it's coincided with the fact he just signed a 5-year deal worth 16, 17 million a year.
Yeah, and Laurie, do you think that just kind of highlights a complete lack of kind of respect for the manager, a lack of discipline at Man United, where Rashford, who really is an academy boy, would probably be one of those people that you'd say should care the most about the club, has that little respect that he's willing to just go out the night before he's supposed to be in training, knowing that everyone's going to be recording him on how modern society works, and then call in sick to training?
Yeah, definitely. When we talk about Man United, we quite often talk about cycles, don't we? And kind of Groundhog Day, and it starts off well, we get results, and then eventually this sort of then the murmurings start coming out of the dressing room, being leaked to the press about everyone doesn't like the training methods and no one likes Ten Hag, and then it normally finishes off with incidents like this. But one thing I will say is, I know like there started to been suggestions of being Rashford being linked with moves away and things like that. If I was Man United in the current situation, the current climate, although he's very, very frustrating, Rashford, and he has had a poor season, and if you're doing things like this off the back of a poor season, it looks even worse. No one would have cared last season, probably, where he was scoring every other week.
Yeah.
But he is still one of United's players with the highest ceilings. And if he can rediscover the kind of form that he showed last season, where he was one of the best players probably in the world, then he's a very handy player to have. And just on the backdrop of restructuring the back room, it looks like there's a lot of sort of technical stuff happening at the club to make you better and have a better platform to push on next season, the season to come. I think Rashford is a player that you want there. So yes, no good for Ten Hag. Doesn't look good on Rashford. Of course, it's going to be blown up when you're in the midst of a poor season. But I think it should settle down, and I don't think it should be like the last straw to sell him or anything like that. I think he should stay put and hopefully go again with another good season next season, maybe.
I'll just quickly on Ten Hag's dealing of the situation. Yesterday, before the game, Man United released a statement to journalists basically saying that Rashford would miss the game totally. He's not in the squad because he was ill and he was too ill to travel. And then after the game, Ten Hag got asked about it and he just point blank said it was an internal matter and that he was going to deal with the situation. And it's once again an example of how the club and the manager aren't quite aligned. And I'm not sure whether it's... I don't want to fully blame Ten Hag on this because English isn't his first language. And I don't think he's fully grasped the English language or how to communicate effectively in the English language. He can speak it, obviously, but it seems to me that he needs to be aligned with the club. And I don't think he's dealt with it well because all he had to say was, the club statement said he was ill, so he's ill. And then deal with it, then deal with the situation internally. Because we all know there has been an issue because obviously the videos and clips go around on social media. Apparently he was vaping, apparently he was drinking. There's pictures everywhere. So, but he doesn't need to feed the narrative by saying it's an internal issue, I'm going to deal with the matter. When the club has already released a statement saying he was ill. So it's confusing from all parties. Rashford, unforgivable, but I don't think Ten Hag's covered himself in glory.
No, I think you bang on there. He's such a poor communicator, which is a massive skill for a manager in this country, whether it's with his players or whether it's handling with the media. Like, look at the Jadon Sancho situation. Like, he almost made that way worse than it was, way earlier than it needed to be. Murph, you're always complaining about questions that Ten Hag has answered, and instead of like quashing them, like you say, T-Gal, like agreeing with the club statement, he kind of throws fuel on the fire by like making it a little bit shady and making it seem more cloak and dagger. He's done it again with the Rashford thing, and look, I don't want to stick the knife in any more on Ten Hag. I don't rate him at all, but communication's a huge thing, and whether English is your first language or not, it's not for Klopp, Guardiola, Mourinho, anyone like that, but they get it right, and it's a massive part of the job in this country, and probably all leagues as well. So you can't be shooting yourself in the foot with easy wins like that and just adding fuel to the fire, which I think he does way too often.
There was an article recently about basically Man United players are getting pissed off basically with Ten Hag's communication style, and it actually drills down into that about his English not being the best. So do you remember when the club came out, or he came out, sorry, and said that we were in talks with Martial and Varane over contract extensions, and the fans completely lost their head that we'd be offering Martial a new contract? It's not that at all. He just got his figure of speech wrong.
Yeah.
And rather than saying, so he was like, we're in talks with the player, but that came out as we're in talks for a new contract, but actually we're not. We're letting him go for free in the summer. There was another incidence of that's happened as well in the mainstream media with him, and it's like that was it. He said yesterday, Newport did nothing, and what his actual point wasn't that Newport did nothing, because people came out and said, well, they did enough to take you to 2-2. what he was saying was up until 2-0, Newport hadn't created anything, and it took a bolt from a blue as a worldie to go through. But you can't feel sorry for him for that, because that's the whole part of it. Communication's so big, the media's so big in the UK, that if you're not comfortable doing English, get a translator. You know, Bielsa was a really successful manager, didn't want to speak broken English and get misinterpreted, so used a translator. Can you do that as Man United manager? I don't know. But yeah, look, I just think that, as you boys have just said, communication's so key, and he's not hitting that on any note. And when your job's under this much pressure, you've got to get that bang on.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. But just one thing to sort of stick up for him a little bit. He's basically been put in charge from last season to effectively change the whole culture of Manchester United Football Club. And those players have not helped him. He's had time and time again where the players have let him down. And like I just said previously, he had 7 days off, Marcus Rashford, to go and get pissed, to go and do whatever he wanted. And then 3 days in training, you've got a day off, and you go and do what he's done and not reported for training, and it's affecting your ability to do your job. So, okay, Ten Hag hasn't dealt with the situation well, but these players, they're just putting him in the shit every single time and delivering him hospital passes after hospital passes. So it is difficult to deal with, I guess, if you're him. But and on this occasion, I actually think it's mostly Rashford's fault. But Ten Hag is not solely, or he's not void of blame, because I don't think he's dealt with it well either. But yeah,
I just can't see.
It's just a shame, because as Rashford demonstrated last season, he's an unbelievable player when he's really confident and he's fit and he's firing. But he's almost reverted. He's reverted back to type this season. So, and I wonder whether that's because of the off-field issues. You don't know, do you?
I just can't see other managers in the league having players do that to them. I can't imagine a City player doing that to Pep, because they'd probably be dropped and ultimately sold from the club. I can't see a Liverpool player having that little respect for Klopp to do that. And now, we've got an episode about how Laurie would run through a brick wall for Big Ange. I can't see a Spurs player doing that either. Bearing in mind, Rashford's are probably our highest paid, most important, best player, pound for pound.
Yeah, but just quickly, the only thing that solves all of these issues are winning football matches. Because I guarantee you, in every single club, in the whole of the EFL, in the Premier League, there are issues like this every season. Because players are players, they're humans. They'll do things like this, whether it's big things, small things, whatever. The only thing that will solve these issues are winning things. So, say for instance, Carl Walker's had his issues with his personal life, or Cancelo fell out with Pep Guardiola. These things all sort of happened, but they go under the radar because Man City are winning everything. Do you know what I mean? Where Man United, we're struggling, and it gets amplified and exaggerated because we're not doing well on the pitch. And so the only thing to answer these criticisms will be to go and win games.
And that's the manager's responsibility. He's in charge of the results at a football club. And you do sometimes feel a bit of sympathy for Ten Hag and like just beating him with one stick after another. But if you're going to be the manager of Man United, that's one of the biggest jobs in the world. So you've got to expect to be able to take the heat. And if you can't, then it's not the job for you. And again, I don't think it is, but that's a different story.
Yeah. Right, we'll move on, boys. Couple of other results from the FA Cup just talk about. So Southampton Pyramid Pod Cup holders, they were, 1 minute away from losing the Pyramid Pod Cup. To be honest with you, I think we were all probably hoping that Watford would hold on there just to give that a bit of a new lease of life. But Armstrong came up trumps for them in the 89th minute. I think it was Stuart Armstrong won it, Tomo, not Adam, and grabbed them a replay against Watford, where I'm sure they'll go on and win that replay and retain the cup. But just for a second, we thought that the Pyramid Pod Cup might be changing hands. And boys, I just want to touch on result not as important, but West Brom 0, Wolves 2. But just want to touch a little bit on your boys' thoughts on that kind of crowd trouble and the kind of build up to the game around that. And it felt like, to me personally, and I spoke to you about this off air, Tomo, but it felt like there was a lot of intensity around this game built up in the media. There was sort of fan sessions where they were talking about the rivalry, the hatred. There's kind of other podcasts that have got a West Brom fan on it. Tom Garrett was talking about the intensity of it and how much, you know, it's likely to go off and that sort of thing. And then it feels like that just kind of all kind of built up into this like absolute frenzy and cauldron at the game on Sunday. The police even did it for 11:45 kickoff to try and minimise that, and it still managed to kick off.
Who do you want to answer? Me, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, you.
Well, look, the thing is, we can sit there. When these things happen, it's a multitude of reasons, and there's loads of different factors into it. Okay, yeah, the media building up the derby might not help, but what do you want the media to do? Not talk it up. We spoke a lot about how bad the FA Cup is marketed over the last couple of weeks, and the media marketing this game as a massive derby only increases interest in it. So you can't expect the media not to do that. I think it was the first time the game had been played in 12 years. And at the end of the day, in every single set of supporters in the country, there's helmets and there's there's fans who will do silly things. So you can't legislate for individuals doing stupid things. I suppose we'll talk later about the Port Vale fan who ran onto the pitch to chase the referee. And it's one of those things where, is it an individual responsibility where you blame the individual and consequence him, or is it a societal thing and a cultural thing that's growing and the game's becoming more unsavoury? I don't think it is. Those incidents are few and far between now. We're only 32, aren't we? So we never sort of lived through the dark ages, I guess, of English football before we were born. But it's just an individual and a big derby, and these things can happen. I don't think it was that bad.
No, there's no way it was 12 years ago the last they played. They were both in the Prem, like the season before last.
In front of a crowd.
Ah, right, okay, that's what it is then. Because I thought it was a bit embarrassing. Like, I kind of agree with what you said, Murph. Like, it's all right building up a derby, the same with Newcastle and Sunderland the other week, but it was kind of like they had to put something on the end of it because it was moved to 11:45, because there was a load of hype for it. It was kind of gave the fans a little bit more of an excuse to kind of do something. And I know we're only talking about 0.01% of people in there, but I mean, for God's sake. But the only other thing I would say is you never would have seen like the players go down the tunnel and the game be called off for half an hour back in the olden days, would you? So it just shows how far we've come from there, that these things don't really happen anymore, and we've got to take a pause from the game. But go on.
Yeah, the procedure and the protocols have come on so much that basically, I guess the ambulance and the guys, the first responders, there has to be a certain amount of them ready in case something happens on the pitch.
Yeah.
And obviously, if they're all going towards the crowd to sort that out, they can't legally, through the procedure, they can't carry on the game until those first responders are back on in their positions, ready to deal with other issues. Potentially, because we've seen like heart attacks on the pitch lately with Tom Lockyer and all these kind of things. So I think it's more of a procedural issue. And also, one thing to note was that actually the incident happened near the players' families where they all sat. So okay. I don't think they were in any state or interested in carrying on the game or anything like that. And I guess that they're just following what the referee says. If the referee tells them to go off, they go off. I do understand what you mean, though. You know how, like, when the police change the kickoff and say this derby's so dangerous that we've got to do it at 11:45, they're almost telling the fans that look how dangerous you all are. So you're expecting trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to do it at 3 p.m. Let them get pissed up. It's just
you suggested that they drink through from Saturday night, Tom, and look what that led to.
Well, they did it. They did it at 11:45. They did it at 11:45 kickoff, and that's the first game I've seen in a long time that had to be postponed because of fights in the crowd.
Yeah.
So it didn't work, did it?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I can't. I know that we had a season without fans. It can't be 12 years since West Brom and Wolves played. They're both like yo-yo teams in the Championship and the Prem. That can't be right. I know that's not what we're talking about, but I'm going to have to dig into that because I cannot see that they've avoided each other since 2012.
Wolves, West Brom, head to head.
That-
Let me have a look. Because I think
That can be your trivia question.
I just can't get on board with it.
While you're looking for that, Tomo, go on.
Here you go. They played twice in 2021, but that was obviously no crowd.
Yeah.
And they played in 2012.
That's mental.
So, and it's because they've just avoided each other. Wolves were down when West Brom were up, and now West Brom are down and Wolves are up. So that's all it is.
One of those
stats.
anomalies that football throws up. Very weird.
So, any repercussions, Tommy? We'll come on to the Port Vale bit later. Obviously, Wolves, West Brom fans there. Do you think that, like, the way around it is, like, we'll single out the minority by sort of affecting the majority? Because it's like, if you do a stadium ban now for Wolves and West Brom, so, like, Wolves have to play United on Thursday in front of an empty stadium, then you kind of put the minority, the pressure on them that they're affecting it for everyone? Or do you think that they were doing that regardless of things like that, like stadium bans and stuff like that? They're kicking off regardless.
Yeah, these helmets are helmets, and they'll always be helmets. And like you see, they do these things just like the video themselves, just for social media likes, and or they'll just do them just for the sake of doing them. You always have to consequence the individual, in my opinion. Just because, like we're talking about these sets of fans here, but 99.9% of the fans in the grounds were good fans going for a good game. And at the end of the day, right, us football fans, we love the passion, and we love the rivalries, and we love like the celebrations and the banter between the crowds and the needle. And sometimes with all of that mixed into like when you mix that all in, all of those ingredients, sometimes it doesn't quite work, and you get some helmets doing bad things. But you can't have all of that without sometimes getting the negative, I don't think, because otherwise then it becomes watered down and a little bit robotic and boring. And that's not what English football is about.
No, I do agree with you. It's just about how you kind of stamp it out, like stadium bans for individuals, etc. It's just, do you put more pressure on them by thinking about overall what their passion is, their football club. So if they can't go and watch them, and the wider crowd can't go and watch them, and that then affects their results on the pitch, does that potentially stop it? But you're right, it probably doesn't. If they want to kick off, they're likely to kick off. So I do get that. Boys, let's move on from the FA Cup. Some news that broke last week, I think Friday morning, that kind of shocked the world, Loro. Jürgen Klopp's going to step down from Liverpool at the end of the season. Just your thoughts on it, but be a little bit on the timing of it as well.
Well, I think it's really sad news for English football fans, obviously for Liverpool, but we're talking about Jürgen Klopp. He is one of the best managers that we've ever had. He's implemented a style of play that's been consistently good. Okay, they've ran into a very good Manchester City and Pep Guardiola era, whereby people are saying, well, he's only won one Premier League and one Champions League, but to even win one Premier League within the Pep Guardiola era is a magnificent achievement. And you can see from the kind of outcry from the Liverpool fans just how powerful a figure he is there and how highly respected he is. And in football management, loyalty and kind of unlimited tenure is a really, really rare commodity, but he has that there. He was almost unsackable, probably was unsackable at Liverpool, and it was always going to be his decision when he went. I don't know exactly when he signed a new contract, but it didn't feel like it was that long ago. So it is a little bit weird, the timing, isn't it? Presumably, I think it came out that he made the decision in November, and presumably, I don't know, some journalists maybe have got hold of it and asked them for comments, so they knew that they had to sort of move up the timeline. I don't know. But, I'm an English football fan, not a Liverpool fan. I will miss Jurgen Klopp being in the Premier League, and his, love him or hate him, he's box office, isn't he? And he always provides a story and always provides some great teams. He's made players out of players that weren't players before. He's made teams into Champions League and Premier League winning sides that probably shouldn't have been on paper, and that's all testament to him. So, Liverpool fans, enjoy the next few months, and it will be a very interesting summer for you.
Tommy, we spoke on the last pod, actually. It was quite spooky timing, really, about Jurgen Klopp. And I was listening back, and I mentioned to you about, obviously, they they'd beaten Fulham at the time. They've beat Norwich at the weekend. I said to you about the quadruple being on, which we kind of laughed at a bit. But do you think that there's a bit in the timing from Klopp? I know, get Laurie's point that it might have just been that there was journalists coming saying, look, you announce it now or we're going to break it. But do you think there's a bit in the timing as well where it's his last season? He's trying to galvanise the players, galvanise the fans to try and win as many trophies as possible?
Nah. See, I think the timing of the announcement is, I guess, testament to the type of bloke Jürgen Klopp is, and the type of leader he is. And he wanted to be front and centre. He wanted to be the one to address the fans. He wanted to be the one to tell the players. So whether or not, like Laurie says, it might have been a journalist who's got hold of the story, etc. I actually think what it is, it's a respect to Liverpool Football Club, because they need to now put the feelers out to see who they can appoint. And not only that, but his backroom staff has left as well. And I think Pep Linders in particular wants to go out and become a manager. So once he tells his agent to tell clubs that he's in for, do you know what I mean? Journalists start getting an agent, putting 2 and 2 together and getting 4. So look, I think it's a really understandable bit of timing, I guess, from Klopp and Liverpool. I don't think it's got anything to do with whether they want to galvanise the players or motivate the players to go and win those trophies any more than they already will. I do believe the announcement, though, will galvanise the players, because the players clearly absolutely love him. You sort of canvass social media and talk sport radio phone-ins, and you see a lot of, I guess, hate and criticism about the loving and the coverage that Klopp has got, because people say, well, he's not died or he's only resigning. But the reality of Jürgen Klopp is, and this is me coming from a massive Manchester United fan and someone who absolutely they're our biggest rivals, Liverpool. And when Klopp was appointed, I was absolutely gutted, because I loved him from his time at Dortmund. And he embodies everything you want in a leader of your football club. And we speak a lot in this podcast about how football is escapism. And it's an escape from your normal life, the struggles you're dealing with, whether it might be, I don't know, you've just moved to a new city, you're struggling to make friends. I'm going to go a little bit deep here, but just bear with me. You just moved to a new city, you're struggling to make friends or something, but you go to the pub, you watch the game, football centres you wherever you are in your life. And I read a couple of articles in it, and one of them mentioned the quote from Arrigo Sacchi, which said, football is the most important of the least important things in life. And Jürgen Klopp, I think, embodied that spirit. And so, okay, he only won 1 Premier League, and okay, he only won each trophy 4 times, and maybe he should have won more trophies. But that's not what football or success is about. And that's not why Liverpool fans are so devastated that he's gone. And it's almost like, I spoke a little bit to a couple of Liverpool fans, and they said it's like almost losing a family member. And I read, let me just read out a paragraph from an article from Jonathan Liu, who he's a writer from The Guardian, and he's a very good writer. And look, he basically sort of sums it up better than I ever could. So let me just read this out. Look, football has never been purely an intellectual exercise, and it's never been purely a professional pursuit. At its best, it is the background music to life, the backdrop to nights in and nights out, and come downs and breakdowns, and hookups and breakups. Not everybody in the navel-adoring world of football really gets that. Somehow, you always felt Klopp did. Liverpool are not my club, and Klopp has never been my manager, but perhaps the greatest tribute you could pay him is that sometimes I wished he was. And that basically sums up Jürgen Klopp's time at Liverpool, I think, quite well, because, okay, he's not had the time that Fergie had at United, but he's basically the modern day Sir Alex Ferguson, I think, for that football club. So I echo everything Lauro said. I'm as a Man United fan, it's exciting times because it means that Liverpool will not be as good as they are. But as an English football fan, it is gutting to see that he's leaving. I know I've banged on a bit there, but
no, it's fine. It's clear to see sort of how much Klopp has affected the English game, where people can speak so passionately about him without being a fan. And you obviously are a direct rival there, Tomo. Laura?
Yeah, emotional tribute from Jürgen Klopp's number one fan there. This is the question that I wanted to ask you both, right? This is the question I wanted to ask. You know, when Fergie, you made it, I agree with your comparison to Fergie. He's like the boss of the whole place, isn't he? Like Stephen Jarrett said, when he went in there to be like the under-18s coach or whatever, Jurgen Klopp's just got the whole place on strings, which is what you want. And obviously, we've seen its success at Man United with Sir Alex before. But when Sir Alex Ferguson left, the timing of that, a lot of people said Fergie's had a look at that squad. He won his last league title, didn't he, 2013? And he thought, I'm getting an awful lot out of this squad. Man City are coming through, and this might actually be the right time for me to go because I'm not sure we can go again here and challenge in the next few years. And I look at Liverpool, and obviously they're top of the league, and Klopp is getting an awful lot out of the players he's got this season. But Salah, 32, Alisson, 32, Van Dijk in his 30s. Is he looking at who's coming through and what the team looks like upon a backdrop of Newcastle spending money, City still there, United going again, Spurs coming as well, and thinking we actually might struggle to consistently keep up with these boys now in the next couple of years? And has that come into his thinking, whereby let's go all out, let's use, I think it does come into it, the emotion of me leaving, because Liverpool's an emotional place, all the Champions League nights and everything like that, they always do so well in Europe because they create that cauldron. Maybe he thinks, let's go out on a high, but we're really going to struggle with the squad that we've got going forward to compete right at the very top as we were in 2017, 18, 19, etc. What do you think about that?
I disagree with that.
I kind of agree, though, Tommy. Let me just say this, that I saw something earlier basically saying how it was like the kids are all right, basically, tribute to Liverpool, about how despite Klopp heading off, despite Salah maybe looking at Saudi, you touched on Van Dijk and Alisson. They were looking at players like Bradley, who settled in at right back in Trent's absence. I think there was a centre mid, McConnell, who played against Norwich, who looked really good. Obviously, they've got like that young centre back, Konsa, who played next to Konate, who's meant to come through. We've spoken that we thought their midfield was light, but actually Gravenberch, Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, McAllister have all looked good this season. But I think that we've spoken at length about how much a manager can come into that, and I think similar to that Sir Alex Ferguson bit there, it's Sir Alex Ferguson managed to win a league because of his genius with players, and no disrespect to him, but you had the likes of like, you know, Darren Gibson and people like that, and you Fabio's and Raphael's and that sort of thing. And I think he looked around and thought, you know what, maybe this is the right time for him to leave. He said that he's knackered Jurgen Klopp, but he'd only recently re-signed on after saying that it was potentially he was going to leave soon. So I definitely think that comes into it. But Tomo, you might think different.
I just think you have to take Klopp or take Klopp at face value. And he says he's running out of energy. He could have left last year when they were really struggling. I believe he wanted to, but he didn't want to leave Liverpool in a really bad place. He's reset the team over the summer and definitely the midfield. And like we said in the previous podcast, this is probably the first year in a 3-year cycle of a new team. And I just think he hasn't got the energy. I just think you've just got to take him at face value. But yeah, okay. He probably sees this season as his best chance to win a league. Because Man City have had that drop off after the treble, etc. And that would be a fitting way to end, I guess. But look, his leadership style is all about relationships and that energy, isn't it? So if he hasn't got it and he doesn't feel like he can give his best for the club, then I think it's probably the best thing for him to leave. So that's my 2 pence.
Is this the same Klopp you want us to take at face value that after the Tottenham game, he was screaming for a replay? We all sat here and said, no, he don't really want a replay. He's just lying to try and create a narrative to help him. I think there is something in it. And like you said, is midfield at the moment we looked at the start of the season, or even a little bit later on, and it's Endo and it's Gravenberch, it's Curtis Jones, and they're playing well at the moment. But I'm not sure they're a top of the table midfield with a different manager. Is what I'm trying to say. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I am as well. Because it would be great to see someone come in and succeed him. But how sort of almost reversely poetic is it that position was always supposed to be Steven Gerrard's, and it now looks like it might be his former midfield teammate Xabi Alonso who's doing things over in Germany. I think he's the top of the bookies' favourites, isn't he?
Yeah, but and that's obviously, it's a moment in time, isn't it? He's obviously doing a great job there. But what we're talking about is that's the challenge for their next manager, is to get the best out of these current players, because Jürgen Klopp may potentially go and win the Premier League this season with this current group of players. And that's the challenge for the next manager, to match that. And that was the challenge for David Moyes. You're saying that, like, in hindsight, it's obviously easy to say that Fergie left an aging squad, but we won the league that year by 11 points. So...
Yeah, I think the thing is that high-performing teams...
Go on.
I just going to say, like, high-performing teams go in cycles, right? And I think Klopp's now bowing out at the top, albeit had a bad season last year by his standards. He might have a better one this year, but I think he's going to bow out at the top where he's thinking, I don't want to now be manager for the next 3 years and just get worse and worse as other teams get stronger, and this high-performing cycle of your Alissons. We've seen Fabinho leave. We've got Van Dijk who's suddenly questioning whether he'd stick about Alisson getting a bit older. And then they start finishing 6th or 7th and people start calling for, is it time for Klopp to finish? Is he past it? A bit maybe like you're seeing with Mourinho now. He's bowing out on his terms like Fergie did, which when you're that level of manager is way better than sort of just aimlessly carrying on with it and potentially getting sacked. I think that's what he's looking to do there.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Tomo. It is the job of the next manager to come in. The worry, I think, for Liverpool fans is how easy that going to be, because Jürgen Klopp will go down as one of the best Liverpool managers and Premier League managers of all time, but it is quite right. He's still only got one Champions League and Premier League out of that. Now, I think that's a good achievement, but he's had the Salahs, the Manes, the Firminos. Do you know what I mean? The next person's going to come in with probably a worse squad, and he's going to have that act to follow with probably greater competition from more than just Man City. So, talk about poison chalice. Liverpool Football Club's a great place to be, but they are very, very big shoes and big aspirations to fill, and it's a huge job for whoever does get it. So it'd be interesting to see who they go for. And sometimes, I know it's easy to look back, but you always say, or we said with the Man United one, the job to get was the one after Moyes. But we're, the one after Moyes. We're 13 years down the line, and it turns out the job to get was one about 7 managers after Alex Ferguson. And you can very, very quickly find yourself in the wilderness, which Liverpool won't want. So let's see if they can avoid the Man United blueprint and get it right.
I am friends with a big Liverpool fan, and he was saying that there was potential that, is it FSR, their owners, Tomo, that they were basically a couple of years ago in conversations about having a behind-the-scenes documentary like we've seen with other clubs, and Klopp kind of said that he'd quit if that was to ever happen, and that would be quashed. But there were rumours up that was gaining momentum again, and so potentially that had something to do with the Klopp bit, which would be absolutely devastating for Liverpool fans. It would completely turn them against their ownership if anything does come of that. Boys, before we move on then.
So just on FSG it is, not FSR.
Yeah,
but,
sorry.
Basically, they've had a couple of missteps, haven't they, over the last 5-10 years since Klopp's been there. I think 9 years, especially the Super League. And Klopp has been that cult of personality that has shielded those owners from that kind of criticism, I guess. Klopp was the first manager, I believe, to publicly go against the Super League and go against his owners, which is something, I guess, to credit him for. But that's another sort of factor that you just made a good point there, is how well will FSG do now without that Klopp shield? Because he's been able to shield them from your sort of typical ownership criticisms because he's such a big personality and he's such an impressive leader. So that's another one to look out for.
Definitely. And just before we move on, we just touched on Xabi Alonso, bookies' favourites. Tommy, you mentioned moment in time, and I do think there's a bit of that with Bayer Leverkusen having a great season, but still not won anything yet. Still a long way to go in their season. They could obviously derail over the coming months, but do you think it will be him? Do you think that Liverpool, if you were in the ownership position, would you be looking closer to the Premier League, like a De Zerbi, or trying to prize a big Ange away from Spurs? Just your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually think if Ange wasn't at Spurs, he would be the perfect guy for Liverpool. He just strikes me as that kind of cult of personality, a little bit like Klopp. But look, it's difficult. De Zerbi and Xabi Alonso will be right up there. Yeah, it's a toss of a coin, really. I think De Zerbi, he seems perfect for Man City's next manager. He seems like, I know Omar Barada's just been appointed the new Man United CEO, and apparently he was really high on De Zerbi replacing Guardiola. So maybe De Zerbi becomes Man United's biggest target if Eric Ten Hag gets sacked. It's one of the, it's hard to predict really, because we're 6 months away from the end of the season and a hell of a lot can happen now. Obviously, Xabi Alonso doing brilliant at the minute, but they could drop off, go out of the Europa League, go out of the Bundesliga title race, and then all of a sudden it's like they're not so high on him. So a lot can happen between now and then.
Yeah, and I think generally when we discuss the next managerial appointment at any club, we're normally talking upon a backdrop of someone's just been sacked or someone hasn't done well enough. So it's easy to look in a different direction and think, well, we need this guy because he plays football. We need this guy because of that. Jürgen Klopp's someone that no one wants to lose. So he's almost irreplaceable, and it makes it harder to know what the best thing to do is, because there isn't another Jürgen Klopp out there you can just go and get. Or if there is, we haven't seen him. So whoever they get is going to be a risk, and it's going to be a little bit different to what we've got in Klopp at the moment at Liverpool. So really interesting to see. But you are right. When Sir Alex Ferguson was replaced with David Moyes, you can't help but feel that maybe the fact that he'd only ever managed Everton and Preston was a little bit of a facet in whether he could garner the respect of such massive players and stuff like that. And will there be a case of that at Liverpool? Having said that, Xabi Alonso was a big name as a player. So do they go for someone known and respected in the managerial game? Do they go for someone like Xabi Alonso, who's young and up and coming and is a bit of a club legend? Maybe. I don't think it'll be Steven Gerrard anymore, though.
No, I don't either. Just a final point, boys. We'll obviously touch on this throughout the rest of the season into the summer, but we might be in a position, if Ten Hag was to leave, that you've got the Man United job available, the Liverpool job available, the Barcelona job available with Xavi leaving. And there was an article, I know Arteta's come out and rubbished it, but an article from a respected kind of Barcelona newspaper called Sport that he was potentially going to leave Arsenal as well. So there might be some massive Premier League jobs available next season.
The word respected Barcelona, sports publications, probably taking it a little bit too far. I think actually that news story was a little bit of mischief making from Barca there, because actually I don't think Barcelona are in that good position to prize an Arteta away from Arsenal these days. But that's by the by. Interesting and exciting times. And like I said, I know I've spoken so highly about Klopp and about Liverpool Football Club, but as a Man United fan, it's exciting because it's that hope that they're not going to be as good, and that hope that we can be the next ones who are as good, because the successful sides always go in cycles.
Yeah, definitely. Boys, let's look at some of the weekend action then. So this must be the second half of the first games of the season, actually, because Liverpool have got Chelsea at home in the league. Arsenal go away to Forest, and Arsenal have lost their previous 3 visits to Forest. So City Ground, not a very easy place to go, and be really intrigued to see how they get on. Villa versus Newcastle, and that was 5-1 in a reverse fixture earlier in the season on the first game, and that's where Sir Alex said that he was potentially most impressed by Villa that weekend, despite losing 5-1. But some big games there towards the top of the table. You got Wolves versus Man United. Wolves haven't lost in 7 games now. And United haven't lost in 3, and their treatment room's now emptying. And you've also got Man City versus Burnley, which is master versus apprentice there in the whole Pep versus Vincent Kompany. So some big games there. But any in particular, Tomo, there, other than the Wolves and Man United game, that you like the look of this week?
Yes, midweek. No, I was just going to say, you can bet your bottom dollar that Wolves are going to beat Man United. I don't know whether it is Wednesday or Thursday. They have had a bit of a gripe, I guess, against Man United ever since that Onana penalty incident at the start of the season. And you can just see it now because Onana's already been kicked out of AFCON, so he's on his way back. You can just see him starting the game and making an absolute ricket and losing. So yeah, that's my only sort of prediction for this week.
My ask
Or
would
midweek.
be if anyone listening to the pod knows whether Erling Haaland is going to be fit enough to play or not tomorrow, or Wednesday, sorry, then please do private messages and let me know, because I've wildcarded, and if he's not going to play, I've got an awful lot of money to spend. And it could be Tony and it could be Foden. So yeah, let me know.
Yeah, we haven't touched on FPO in a few weeks, actually, boys. I've got Haaland in. I wildcarded last week, and I was like, I'm going to take the hit and just have him on the bench until he's back fit. Otherwise, I'd then be scrambling about trying to find the additional money for him. But yeah, I think my move is getting De Bruyne in as well, and I've got Foden, and I'm going to go for the Foden, KDB, Haaland till the end of the season. And if they explode onto the scene, that could fire me up our mini league. So yeah. Looking forward to seeing if Haaland's back this week. Move on to EFL, boys, and we'll just preview some of the action that happened on the weekend. So, Lauro, Sunderland won. We spoke on Mickey Beale a bit before and pressure right on him. I think he's had some pretty inflammatory remarks as well that he's made to the fans in recent kind of press conferences, but a good win for them against Stoke. And we spoke about them needing a striker as well. They've been linked with Kiefer Moore this week as well, so potentially some good news there for Sunderland.
Well, Kiefer Moore would be perfect, first and foremost, at getting on the end of all the chances on and off the ground that Sunderland create. But did you notice before the game against Stoke, they sort of quickly flung out a club communication, and it was that Alex Pritchard had asked to leave the club. He withdrew himself from selection and didn't want to play. And I don't know, unless you boys know any more than that, it seems to me like a bit of a falling out maybe between him and the manager. That's what all the fans are in the comments saying. So that's not a good look. If he's not got the media on side, he's definitely not got the fans on side, and he ain't got the players on side. I mean, 3-1 is a very good win, and a poor result for Stoke not being able to capitalise on a kind of negative atmosphere around Sunderland at the moment. But I still don't think it looks good for Mick Beale. Having said that, I think they're level 6th. I think they're 6th, 7th, and level on points for the playoffs. So again, it makes a mockery, I think, of the manager they let go early in the season in Tony Mowbray, because if they'd kept him, there's no way he would have done worse than what they've done in the meantime.
Yeah, there's a bit of that north-south divide there going on. I noticed in his pre-match press conference, he basically, I think he got asked a question about how he's been getting stick for being a Cockney, for being from London. And he's like, well, I can't change my accent. I've not changed my accent for the last 40, 50 years, however long I've been alive. So I'm not going to change it now. And it is a little bit bristly and a little bit prickly for this time of in his tenure. But
it's just not a good fit, is it?
It doesn't look like it. Yeah. It doesn't look like it. But at the end of the day, look, Kiefer Moore, if that does come off, that would be a fantastic sign-in at that level. And they do need, we spoke a little bit, they do need like a talisman that your Jack Clark can play off and assist. And I would have said Pritchard, but it looks like he won't play for the club again. But it's a difficult one. But look, he's coming off the back of a 3-1 win, so a little bit of positivity maybe.
Jack Clark linked with Lazio in the last couple of days of the transfer window. Apparently they've want him for 15 mil, but Sunderland say that's not even close to what they'd be looking for. I think he'd be a big part in firing them back up into the Prem if they were to go up, albeit via the playoffs. So, I think that was a bit lowball from Lazio. Just a bit of transfer news from the Championship as well. So Ali Al Hamadi, who's away currently on international duty at the Asia Cup with Iraq, he has apparently finalised in a move to Ipswich for £1 million. Tomo from AFC Wimbledon, obviously someone we've touched on throughout the season. I think he's up to 13 league goals, got 6 or 7 assists as well in his 23 games. But Ipswich obviously bolstering their ranks up front, albeit a bit of a gamble for a player from League Two.
Yeah, but for a sort of newcomer EFL fan like myself, I think that one's really interesting to keep an eye on over the next 6 months if it does go through. Because we spoke a lot about Langstaff potentially making the jump, and we spoke a lot about this player El Hamadi being really impressive for Wimbledon. So I just want to see how he does in the Championship and how he beds in. And Ipswich, I do think they need a spark, because I think they've lacked that a little bit in the last 6 weeks. Maybe the squad depth's not quite as well. It's definitely not quite as strong as their other 3 competitors going for that automatic promotion. So, look, we've all individually said that he's looked really good for Wimbledon this season. So it's going to be a good signing, you'd like to think.
Yeah, so he signed. They've announced it today. Ipswich, quick, strong, powerful, eye for goal, hard to play against, lots of assists as well. I think Ipswich particularly is a great fit, because they're a squad of players that aren't names. They're all players that you'd have said were League One level a year ago. And I'm not just saying that because Ipswich were in League One. They're not household names. The likes of Wes Burns, Connor Chaplin, Broadhead, who they've got on loan from Everton, who's been down at Wigan and Sunderland as well in League One. Kieran McKenna's found a way of galvanising them into a team and making them a force. And I think, like you said, they need a bit of a spark now to go again after January. They've hit a bit of a lull. I think that's a perfect signing from every aspect you look at it. And players coming up from League 1 and 2 into the Championship doesn't always work. I think last season or the season before, Bristol City signed Mehmeti from Wickham. They don't play him enough, but then every now and again you get an Adebayo that Luton signed from Walsall that no one had ever really heard of, and now he's in the Prem scoring some goals and playing well. And I think Al Hamadi is going to be on the successful side of that, and I think Ipswich is a great fit for him. So, yeah, well done, Tractor Boys.
Apparently they want a second striker in as well, or second forward player before the dedeadline as well. So I wonder
Well, I'd
whether
seen
they
them
might
link with Kiefer Moore, because he played for them under Mick McCarthy, so that's another option for him. And if I was Kiefer Moore, it feels like, I know they've hit a little bit of a sticky patch of form, but they're still second in the league, I think. So I'd probably rather go back to Ipswich on common ground, but let's see.
Yeah, apparently Sunderland, Ipswich, and I think it might be Coventry all in for Kiefer Moore. So a few different options there. One obviously very much going for automatic, and the other 2 6th and 7th, and very
Cardiff
much in the playoff phase.
It's Cardiff.
Was he at Cardiff before?
Yeah,
Loro.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that might be a bit of a sway for him. But if it was a toss-up between Ipswich and Sunderland, as you say, then it'd be interesting to see which way he goes with that. Couple games of midweek action for the Championship just to touch on, boys. Coventry versus Bristol City, obviously touched on how well Coventry are doing. And then Leicester, they're at home to Swansea tomorrow night as well. So, another important game for Leicester. Weekend results from League One. So Portsmouth win at Port Vale. And Tomo, you touched on the fan on the pitch chasing the ref. Not everyone's likely to have seen that who's listened. So can you just explain a little bit of context behind that?
Yeah, okay. So Portsmouth get a penalty late on. And to be fair to the referee, it was a stonewall penalty. But Port Vale, the players clearly had a gripe with him because of an incident just before the penalty where they should have got a free kick, but they didn't. And then Portsmouth go down the other end and get a penalty. Colby Bishop steps up, scores the goal. Massive goal for them, as we spoke about their sort of, well, similar to Ipswich, really. Their lull in form over the last 4 or 5 weeks. So it was a massive win for them. But then I think towards the end of the game, just before full time, a Port Vale fan, I shouldn't laugh, but a Port Vale fan runs onto the pitch and he's going for the referee. And the referee clocks him just in time, really, and pegs it away. And I know we sort of laugh about these kind of incidents, and they are kind of funny. But the reality of that situation is, it only takes one mental fan with a knife to go on the pitch and just stab a referee or something, and then it's like a complete. It sort of changes the incident from a slightly humorous and a little bit funny to really, really serious. So it's a difficult one. It's not something you like to see, and we spoke a lot about referees this season and the challenges of VAR and criticising all of those involved, and it feels like there is a growing culture in this country of blaming referees for everything, and this is, I guess, a natural extension of that, is that fans feel empowered to go on the pitch and well, he hasn't physically attacked him, but it looked like he was about to. So I don't know what you boys think of it, but it's unsavoury.
Yeah, well, it's very much unsavoury. I just think that one thing that really annoyed me is I saw a top journalist say that it was like really depressing to see none of the players help the ref, and I'm thinking to myself, what this guy's like obviously really, really pissed off. And as you say, Tomo, it takes one idiot to potentially have somehow got a blade or something sharp into the ground or have something on him. What on earth was a player's like duty to try and intercept that? It's got to be down to better stewarding, policing, and that sort of thing. And that just really annoyed me about that. So yeah, I really didn't like seeing that comment from that journalist.
Yeah,
Laura?
you've got to throw it before Laura comes in. You have to throw the book at this individual. You've got to ban him for life from all football grounds, because you've got to consequence these individuals, because that's the only way to stop them from doing it again, or stop their mate from doing it, or like those people at West Brom who stormed the pitch, and you have to just ban them for life, and then they'll soon, like, their mates won't do it in the future, will they? Or do you know what? It's I don't know how to deal with it, but it seems like the criticism around the referees and the blame, especially from managers, they're blaming referees for everything, and this is what is culminated in.
Yeah, probably. Like, we're always going to have football players and managers deflect stuff onto referees, and we can't kind of make the leap from that to referees getting attacked. A referee getting attacked is the fault of the individual that's running onto the pitch and stuff like that. You're right. You need to throw the book at him, ban him from all football grounds and all pubs, just to be annoying. Like you said, his mates won't want to do it in future. He'd have ruined it. And yeah, look, I just think that if you give an inch, people to take a mile, and if people can see that that's possible without getting massive repercussions, it might happen again. And next time it might be slightly worse, and then slightly worse. And then what does it take to actually throw the book at someone? So yeah, do it now, quash it, and hopefully we won't see it again.
Yeah, the only worrying thing is with these kind of individuals is these are the these type of fellas who do stuff like this. Don't give a fuck. They don't care if they get punished. Like, do you remember maybe 6-7 weeks ago, those two Sheffield Wednesday fans who held up a picture of Bradley Lowry to the Sunderland fans and were doing some like obscene gestures to him about him, and it's like, and I think a WhatsApp conversation with him and his mates got leaked, and basically he said, "I don't care I don't actually care," and these are the type of individuals you're dealing with, because they don't even care about the consequences. So it's difficult. It's really difficult to police.
And to be fair, Simon Jordan always says this on TalkSport, sticking up for like England fans and stuff. Where is the divide between like a social issue and a football issue? Like you say, these people don't care regardless. So whether they're at a football ground, at the cinema, in the pub, in the middle of town, they don't care. They're probably going to do stupid things anyway. It's not football's fault. Do you know what I mean? It's just those people's fault. And unfortunately, it's about eradicating those behaviours from people rather than calling it football fans just because it happened at a football game.
Yeah, you're right, actually, chaps. You can try and police a game or try and like condense down the hours that people can drink before a game, all of those sort of things. But ultimately, it's not football's place to do that, in regards to they're probably not going to be able to make a difference to these people because it's societal issues rather than just a Saturday 3:00 issue. They don't just get revved up for that and then be normal humans Monday to Friday and on Sunday, I doubt. So yeah, it's a really difficult one to solve, but I think a really interesting point, Tomo, how much the media are on at refs, VAR, EFL, I spoke to a couple of people at the weekend about how the standard of the referee in the EFL is absolutely shambolic, and they don't want VAR, but the kind of decisions made in that are absolutely farcical. And managers come out and blame defeats on the referees, that they are public enemy number one. So if you're in that kind of that sort of stand in that kind of mob mentality, all of your hatred's directed to that one bloke, isn't it? And it only takes one person who's got the bollocks basically to run onto the pitch that they're going to do it.
Yeah, well, and this all sort of the reason why we've got bad standards of refereeing is because there's not enough referees getting trained up to do it, and no one wants to do it. So there's
because you start off in Sunday League football, and these people who are running onto the pitch to get at refs are the people playing on a Sunday. So they're just punching refs and starting on refs and harassing refs at the game that they're actually involved in. So why on earth would you get into refereeing and try and make a living or a career out of it?
I know, yeah. It's I hate the whole argument. This is a different topic for another day, I guess, but I hate the argument where your Graham Souness's of this world and Danny Murphy's just go, oh, well, you just put ex-players in the VAR room and it will work. And it's like, well, ex-players disagree on decisions all the time.
Yeah.
So not every ex-player is gonna get every decision right. It's just complete bullshit. We live in a blame culture and a society where it's everyone else's fault except yourself. And this in football, obviously, that culminates in blaming the referee and the officials for everything. So it's a shame, and these incidents, I guess, pop up because of that, or that's a major factor for why it's happening.
Can I just say, I do personally think it would help enormously, not just from like an accountability point of view, but from like a human kind of emotional level, if we could hear from the refs after games and give them a chance to say, I know this has been discussed, but say why they made a certain decision, or maybe hold their hands up and say, oh, I didn't see it like that, really sorry. I think that would draw out a lot of the hatred and frustration towards referees, because you see them on more of a personal level. Like we see Howard Webb, for instance, at the Sky Sports Studios, are doing those programs now as the head of the PGMOL, and you kind of like the guy, and you're seeing how he's coming to a certain decision. So I think they should do that. I think they should come out after the games, and if there's a big decision, just front up to it, particularly at the high level where they're obviously getting paid a bit more money. And maybe people will be, because one of the biggest frustrations towards refs, particularly for players and managers, and then that goes into fans as well, is how kind of like ignorant they are and arrogant they are towards things, and they'll just be like, no, go away. And I know there's got to be a certain degree of respect, but that goes two ways. At least come out and say, look, I got that wrong, or look, I gave a penalty because of this reason. You might not agree, but I thought that was a pen. And then you've got more of a human interaction, and I think more ability to forgive or understand, rather than just a guy throwing his hand in your face, being ignorant and pissing you off, which is how we all feel about referees sometimes.
But in the individual referees' defence, I would probably suggest most of them agree with you, Laura. But it's the PGMOL who are saying, no, don't say anything, or do you know what I mean? Don't put your foot in it. And actually, I don't know what you boys think of this. I think maybe 6 months ago, there were stories knocking about of a sort of Drive to Survive style documentary series following the referees. And I guess it would humanise them. I don't know whether that would work well in humanising them, because these TV shows or these documentaries following sport still need the heroes and the villains and the storylines to work. But it might be good just to see, well, just to see that these officials are human and they've got families and they've got and this is how a bad decision will affect them just as much as it affects you, the team who's supported. I don't know.
I think a perfect instance of that, boys, has been the referees who've since retired you listen to on podcasts, be it an Under the Cosh or Mike Dean going on the Peter Crouch podcast and then going to like Crouch Fest and stuff like that. And I just instantly see them as better blokes. Like, I thought Mike Dean was a pretty bang average ref and a bit of a dick, but like, I listen to him on podcasts, and when he's in the studio now sometimes, isn't he, in games, I actually think he's an all right fella. Like, you then have seen photos of him going and watching, I think, is it Tranmere that he's a fan of, and it's like, actually, this guy's all right. And so if you could do that whilst they're in the middle of their careers, maybe there'd be a bit less flack on them.
But Mike Dean's a really good example of, he went on Simon Jordan's podcast, the Upfront podcast, and he told a story of how he tried to help Anthony Taylor, because he was the VAR official. He tried to help Anthony Taylor in a decision because he was his mate. And everyone clipped that little bit up for that week on social media and accused him of being or lacking integrity as a referee. And so that's an example of how being open and honest can go two ways, and it could go against you as a referee. And he got absolutely slated for it. So,
but he only said that.
That's
he only said that in retrospect. He's retired now. If you were coming out week to week and facing the media, of course you wouldn't say stuff like that. But I think what you said about like a behind the scenes, like Drive to Survive, all the people that come out of those documentaries, Ronnie O'Sullivan one lately, I think there's going to be a darts one, the golf one, everyone comes out with way more respect. You come out like with a newfound admiration for the people in there because you see what they go through and stuff, and it does humanise them. And unless you're that CEO from Sunderland that wanted to change the run-out music to Darude, you come away with a lot more credit than you go in with. And there's something's got to be done because they get no respect whatsoever, let's be honest with you, until you actually start hearing from them on podcasts later on and they feel more free to be human. So I think that's something to definitely look into. I'm not blaming refs, Tigo. I understand it's their bosses or the referee control group that make those decisions, but I think they should look at it and think, right, if we do that, A, there's probably a load of money to be made in a programme like that, but B, it can't be any worse than it is now, can it?
Yeah.
Just going back full circle on obviously this being the Portsmouth or Port Vale, there might need to be a little bit of thinking. That would probably be your top refs, wouldn't it, in your Premier League and your VARs and the household names we all know. Where there's probably work that needs to be done even more so is in your EFL referees who potentially don't have VAR to fall back on and probably then be able to blame and be the talking points to take the heat of. It's what can we do to humanise EFL refs as well in games like Portsmouth, Port Vale. Just to round up some of the other EFL games, boys. So Bolton and Derby both won at the weekend, but Peterborough drew and Barnsley actually lost there. EFL game on midweek for League One, Oxford versus Portsmouth. Oxford obviously in the playoff hunt, Portsmouth right up there at the top, Bolton hot on their heels. So really big game, that one. And just some results from League Two. Stockport won 5-1 at Doncaster. They're now 5 points clear after a little bit of a blip. They're right back on track. But that's kind of down to teams around them dropping some points as well. Mansfield lost at Wimbledon. They've now not won in 4 and only won 1 in their last 6 league games. Barrow and Notts County both in the playoff hunt drew. And Crewe, they lost 3-2 against Salford. I think Smith scored a hat-trick for Salford there. And their manager, Carl Robinson's come in and made an instant impact at Salford, as I think we tipped him to. So, yeah, good week for Stockport, actually, with all the other sides around them. But League Two, obviously, as interesting as ever. Laura, come to you now. Just want you to reflect a little bit on the 1-1 draw at St Albans for Yeovil. Obviously, we got Slough at home tomorrow. Touch on that. I think Reece Murphy, Jake Hyde and Smith all out tomorrow, the first two being a bit more long-term. If we can just get a bit of a Glover's update.
Yeah, well, we drew at the weekend, which ended our 5-game winning run. No problem going to a team like St Albans and drawing. They're probably one of, if not the best footballing side I've seen us play this season when I watched us at home. So going and getting a point there is absolutely fine. We're way above 2 points a game this season and we're 10 points clear. The worry is the injuries. When we signed Reece Murphy and Jake Hyde at the start of the season, the risk was that they were players with injury records and they were prone to having time on the sidelines. I think we've done well to get to nearly February and have them both available for pretty much the whole season. So I'm not overly worried about that. We've just put Ollie Thomas back in on loan from Bristol City. He really impressed at the start of the season. But the big one is Michael Smith, our right back, our ex-Northern Ireland international defender who has completely changed the way that we play, both defensively and even probably more so going forward from right back. He's one of the best players we've ever had at the club. I can say that already. And he limped off with a hamstring injury. And when he's not there, I mean, he's been an ever-present since he came in September. Before that, we were losing and drawing games a lot more than we are now. So, Slough at home tomorrow. It's a game in hand to go back to 13 points clear. And I just feel like tomorrow's a big game. I know it's stupid to say because we're 10 points clear, but if we win tomorrow, we go into February 13 points clear in a season that ends in April. If we lose, it could kind of set a tone for a bit more of a negative spell, which we really don't want and haven't really had this season since the opening kind of couple of games. So decision to be made at right back. Glad that we've got Ollie Thomas through the door. Big game at home to Slough that we need to win to really consolidate our position as sort of runaway title holders, and hopefully we will do that. So looking forward to Hewish Park tomorrow, and I want 3 points desperately.
Yeah, up the Glovers. Say get back on track. They've drawn a game. That's the standard that they've set this season. But hopefully get back to winning ways against Slough tomorrow. And hopefully with Murphy and Hideout still plenty of options there to put the ball in the back of the net. Laura, I'm going to come back to you as well, actually. You are up for trivia this week. So obviously I had my 4 pools question, and we had a couple that did get 4 out of 4, actually. So congratulations to them who messaged in on Twitter about that. But you're up this week, so let's have it.
Well, as you know, I'm an EFL man. And since 2004, when the EFL was rebranded from the nationwide Division 1, 2 and 3 into the Coca-Cola Championship League 1 and 2, 20 years ago, there have only been 2 men in the championship that have won the Golden Boot twice. Can our listeners name them?
And they've won the championship Golden Boot.
They've won the championship Golden Boot twice. In the last 20, the championship is 20 years old. It used to be called Division 1. When they rebranded it was the championship. So since 2004, we've had 20 seasons, and the Golden Boot has only ever been won twice by the same player. Twice. Which 2 players are they?
Good stuff. Yeah, if you're listening, reach out on social media or on YouTube, or message in and say what you think if you know that. But we'll reveal the answer on later in the week's pod. And boys, that's all we got time for today. But we'll be back on Friday this week. We've obviously got the full fixture list of Premier League, so we're going to let those Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday games play out, and come back Friday to have a look at any of the key action from there and preview the weekend fixtures. But pleasure as always, boys. Cheers.
Cheers, boys.